My name is Claire. I was 27 years old the night my family decided to turn my biggest professional achievement into a rumor I could never forget. It was supposed to be a celebration. The company had booked the private lounge on the top floor of our building. Soft lights, clean white tables, champagne glasses lined up like someone had actually planned this with care. My manager had sent a calendar invite weeks ago. Promotion announcement, team and guests welcome. Guests. That was why my family was there. My mom wore a dress she saved for special occasions. My aunt kept taking photos. My younger cousin hovered near the dessert table like this was a wedding instead of a work event. They smiled a lot. Loudly. Too loudly. I told myself to be grateful. I had worked 3 years for this. Late nights. Missed weekends. Projects no one wanted until they succeeded and suddenly everyone remembered my name. I was the one who stayed when others transferred. The one who fixed mistakes quietly so the team didn't look bad. And now, finally, my boss was about to say it out loud. When he tapped the microphone, the room hushed. I stood near the front, hands clasped together so tightly my fingers hurt. My heart was pounding, but it was a good kind of nervous, the kind that comes right before something changes. He talked about performance, about consistency, about trust. Then he said my name. Applause filled the room. My coworkers smiled at me. A few clapped me on the shoulder. My boss shook my hand and leaned in to say, "You earned this." For a moment, everything felt solid. I turned toward my family, expecting to see pride. My mom smiled, but it was tight. My aunt raised her eyebrows like she had just heard something interesting, not impressive. My cousin leaned toward her and whispered something that made them both laugh. I told myself not to overthink it. After the announcement, people mingled. I answered congratulations, accepted hugs, sipped champagne I barely tasted. That's when I heard it. Not loudly, not meant for me. "She must have a good relationship with her boss," my aunt said, voice dripping with meaning. My cousin snorted. "That's one way to put it." I froze mid-step. My mom laughed softly. "Well, things like that don't just happen." I stood there, glass in my hand, my name still echoing in the room, and realized they weren't joking. They were planting something. I turned slowly. "What does that mean?" I asked. My aunt waved a hand. "Oh, relax. We're just talking." "Talking about what?" I pressed. My cousin shrugged. "You know, office politics." My mom avoided my eyes. "Don't be sensitive, Claire. Sensitive." That word had followed me my whole life whenever I reacted to something that made them uncomfortable. I scanned the room then, really scanned it. And that's when I saw him, my boss, standing near the bar. Not talking, not laughing, just watching. Close enough. I didn't know how much he had heard, but I knew he had heard enough. My stomach dropped. My aunt leaned closer to a coworker I barely knew and said, "She's very charming. Men like that." I felt heat rush to my face. "Stop," I said quietly. My cousin rolled his eyes. "What? It's not an insult. Plenty of women do it." I stared at him. "Do what? Sleep their way into a promotion?" I looked back at my boss. Our eyes met briefly. His expression was unreadable. Then he turned and walked away. That was when fear replaced embarrassment. Because rumors don't need to be loud to work. They just need the right audience. And my family had never expected that audience to include the one person whose opinion actually mattered. At first, I told myself it would pass. Families say stupid things at events they don't belong in. They get uncomfortable around success that isn't theirs, so they try to shrink it into something familiar. I had seen it before, just not aimed this sharply at me. I moved away from them and joined a group of coworkers near the windows. The city lights below looked unreal, like a different world that hadn't heard what was being said behind me. Someone asked about my new role. I explained it simply. Expanded responsibilities, bigger projects, more accountability, normal things. That's when my aunt drifted closer, champagne glass in hand. "So," she said, smiling too wide. Will you still have time for family now that you're busy? There was a pause. A few coworkers glanced between us. I've always had time, I replied. She tilted her head. Must be nice getting ahead so quickly. I felt my jaw tighten. It wasn't quick, she laughed. Of course not. My cousin joined us. You should give us tips, he said. Some people work for years and don't get noticed. One of my coworkers chuckled politely. Another looked uncomfortable. I realized then what they were doing. They weren't attacking me directly. They were suggesting, letting people connect the dots they were drawing. I excused myself and went to the restroom, locking myself into a stall and pressing my hands against my face. My heart was racing. Not because I was ashamed, but because I understood the danger. Rumors don't need proof. They just need repetition. When I came back out, I saw my boss again. This time talking quietly with HR near the edge of the room. My chest tightened. I stayed where I was. Across the room, my mom was laughing with two junior managers I had only met once. She gestured toward me as she spoke, her smile practiced, her voice low. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I recognized the tone. The same one she used at family gatherings when she explained my achievements away. When she told people I was lucky. When she said I knew how to talk to people. By the time the event ended, my excitement was gone. In the elevator down, my family was still buzzing. That was fun, my aunt said. Your office is very modern, my cousin smirked. I still can't believe you made manager before 30. I didn't respond. My mom glanced at me. Don't sulk. You know we're proud. I looked at her. Then why do you talk about me like that? She frowned. Like what? I opened my mouth, then closed it. What was the point? Back home, I lay awake replaying the night. Not the applause, not the congratulations, the glances, the pauses, the way my boss had gone quiet. The next morning, things felt different at work. Not hostile, not obvious, just cautious. A coworker who used to joke with me kept things strictly professional. Someone else avoided eye contact. During a meeting, a comment I made was met with silence that felt heavier than disagreement. At lunch, a friend leaned in and asked gently, "Are you okay?" "Yes," I said automatically. She hesitated. "There's talk." My stomach dropped. "About what?" She lowered her voice. "About how you got promoted." I didn't ask her to finish. I already knew. That afternoon, my boss asked me to stop by his office later. No context, no emotion, just a calendar notification. I sat at my desk staring at the screen. This was how it happened. Not in one dramatic explosion, but in small, careless sentences that took on a life of their own. That night, I opened a new document on my laptop. I titled it Timeline. I wrote down the date of the promotion. Who was there? What was said? Who said it? Not because I planned to use it, but because something told me I might need it. And because for the first time, I understood something clearly. My family didn't just embarrass me. They put my career at risk. And they didn't even notice. The meeting with my boss was scheduled for 3:30 p.m. That gave me 6 hours to overthink every possible outcome. I tried to work like nothing was wrong. I answered emails, reviewed documents, sat through 2 meetings where my name was mentioned like it always had been, professionally, neutrally. But underneath the surface, everything felt off. People were careful around me, not rude, not cold, just measured. Like they didn't know which version of the story was true yet. At lunch, I sat alone. Not because anyone pushed me away, but because no one pulled up a chair either. The room buzzed with normal conversation, but none of it reached me. I kept thinking about my aunt's voice, my cousin's smirk, my mother's silence. They had walked back into their lives after the party. I was the one left standing in the fallout. At 3:28, I closed my laptop and stood up. My legs felt unsteady as I walked down the hallway toward my boss's office. Every step felt louder than it should have. The door was open. "Come in," he said. He didn't smile. He didn't frown either. He gestured for me to sit. I did. He folded his hands on the desk. I want to talk about last night. I nodded. Okay. There were comments made, he continued, by people who identified themselves as your family. My throat tightened. Yes. He paused. I want to be clear. I heard them. The words landed heavily between us. I didn't respond in the moment because it wasn't appropriate to do so publicly, he said, but that doesn't mean they went unnoticed. I forced myself to breathe. What exactly did you hear? I asked. He didn't repeat the words. He didn't need to. He said, enough to understand the implication. My hands were clenched in my lap. I didn't earn this promotion through anything inappropriate. I know, he said immediately. The tension in my chest released just slightly. This promotion was based on performance data, project outcomes, and peer reviews over 3 years, he continued. No one here questions that. Then he looked directly at me. But rumors don't care about facts, he said. They care about momentum. I swallowed. I didn't start them. I'm aware, he said. But they are attached to your name now. That was the part that scared me. Names stick. He leaned back. I want to know how you want to proceed. I stared at him. Proceed how? We can address this formally, he said. Or we can let it fade. I thought about my family laughing, about coworkers avoiding my eyes, about how easily the narrative had shifted. I don't want special treatment, I said. I just want the truth to be clear. He nodded slowly. That's reasonable. He asked me to write a brief account of what happened at the event. Who said what? Where? I hesitated, then agreed. When I left his office, my phone buzzed. My mom. Why hasn't anyone congratulated me on raising such a successful daughter? Your boss barely looked at me last night. I stared at the screen. She wasn't worried about me. She was offended. I didn't reply. That evening, Luke called. You didn't have to take it so seriously, he said. It was just talk. Talk that reached my boss, I replied. He scoffed. You act like we planned this. I think you didn't care, I said. There's a difference. He hung up. That night, I opened the timeline document again. I added the meeting, the confirmation, the fact that my boss had heard everything. Seeing it written down made something clear. I wasn't imagining this. This wasn't insecurity. This was damage control. And the damage hadn't been caused by strangers or jealous coworkers. It came from the people who were supposed to protect my name when I wasn't in the room. As I closed my laptop, I realized something else. My family still thought this was private. A misunderstanding. A joke that got out of hand. They had no idea how close this was to becoming official. And they had no idea how much worse it could get. For them. The strangest part wasn't the rumor itself. It was how quickly my family rewrote it. By the weekend, my mom had decided the problem wasn't what they said. It was how I reacted. She called me Saturday morning, voice light, like she was checking in about groceries instead of my career. You really embarrassed us, she said. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone pressed to my ear. How? You made it awkward, she replied. People could tell you were upset. I closed my eyes. People could tell because you implied I slept my way into a promotion. She sighed, exaggerated. That's not what we said. It's what you meant, I replied. She paused. You're twisting things. That sentence landed exactly where it always had. Anytime I confronted something uncomfortable, I was twisting. Misunderstanding. Taking it the wrong way. You know how people talk, she continued. It's not our fault if someone takes it seriously. My boss took it seriously, I said. Her tone sharpened. Well, that's his problem. I felt something settle in my chest. This wasn't denial. This was refusal. That afternoon, my aunt texted me a laughing emoji and wrote, Didn't realize you were so sensitive now that you're important. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and added more to the timeline. The phone call, the exact phrasing, the lack of apology. Writing it down didn't make me angrier. It made me calmer. Because patterns become obvious when you stop explaining them away. On Monday, HR emailed me requesting a short meeting to clarify context. Clarify. That word felt heavier than it should have. In the conference room, 2 HR reps sat across from me, Neutral expressions, careful wording. They asked about the event, about my guests, about comments overheard by multiple employees. I answered factually. No emotion, no speculation, just what was said and by whom. When they asked if I felt my reputation had been harmed, I paused. Yes, I said. That was the first time I said it out loud. They nodded and took notes. After the meeting, my boss stopped by my desk. "Thank you for handling this professionally," he said quietly. "I know it's uncomfortable." I nodded. I didn't expect it to come from them. He didn't respond to that. That night, my family group chat lit up. My cousin: "Why is HR asking questions?" My aunt: "Did you report us?" My mom: "This is getting out of control." I stared at the messages. Out of control. That's what accountability feels like when you've never had to face it before. "I didn't report anyone," I typed. I answered questions honestly. My mom replied almost instantly: "You could have protected us." I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. I protected myself. There was silence after that. 2 days later, my boss called me into his office again. He closed the door this time. "We're going to address this," he said. I felt my stomach drop. "How?" "Formally," he replied, "because the source of the rumor is clear." I thought of my family laughing over champagne. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "And you should know. I don't tolerate this kind of narrative, especially when it targets competence." He leaned forward. "Your work stands on its own. I intend to make that visible." When I left his office, I felt something I hadn't felt since the promotion announcement. Not pride, relief. That evening, my mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You're tearing this family apart," she said. I looked at her calmly. "No, I stopped covering for it." She stared at me, stunned, because for the first time, the story she was telling didn't work, and she could feel it slipping out of her control. The email went out on Thursday morning. Not dramatic, not accusatory, just precise. A company-wide message from senior management announcing my promotion again, this time with details. Project metrics, revenue growth, client retention numbers, performance evaluations pulled directly from internal systems. It read like a report, not a defense. And that was what made it powerful. By noon, the office felt different. People stopped by my desk, not cautiously this time, but openly. One coworker said, "I read the announcement. Congratulations. You earned every line of that." Another apologized quietly for not knowing what to say earlier. I thanked them and kept working. Because this wasn't about winning people over. It was about restoring ground that should never have been taken. My phone buzzed nonstop. My aunt: "What is this email supposed to mean?" My cousin: "Why did they include all that detail?" My mom: "Did you ask them to send that?" I didn't respond. I was in a meeting when my boss asked me to stay after everyone else left. He closed the door and leaned against the desk. "I want you to know something," he said. "I didn't write that to protect you." I looked up. "I wrote it to protect the company," he continued, "because when people imply promotions come from misconduct, it undermines every decision we make." I nodded slowly. "And," he added, "because I was there when those comments were made." My chest tightened. "You heard everything?" "Yes," he said, and I didn't appreciate it. He told me HR had finished their review. Multiple employees had confirmed hearing the same implications. The source was consistent. Family members, named. "We're setting boundaries," he said. "They're no longer welcome at company events." I exhaled, a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "This isn't punishment," he added. "It's professionalism." That afternoon, my mom called. Her voice wasn't sharp this time. It was strained. "They said we're not welcome anymore," she said. "I know," I replied. "You let them do this," she accused. "No," I said. "You did." She went quiet. "We were just talking," she said finally. "You know how families are." "I know how rumors work," I replied. "You didn't have to escalate it," she said. "I didn't," I said. "I stopped minimizing it. That's when her voice cracked. People are looking at us differently now, she said. I closed my eyes. That was the first honest sentence she had spoken. That evening, Luke showed up at my door. He didn't knock hard. Just once. You happy? He asked. I looked at him. About what? About them being embarrassed, he said. About everything being awkward now. I'm not happy, I said. I'm done. He scoffed. You always think you're right. I met his eyes. I think I told the truth. He left without another word. That night, I opened the timeline one last time. I added the email, the meeting, the boundary. Then I closed the file. Not because the story was over, but because it no longer needed documentation. The truth was no longer private. It was official. The silence didn't last long. By the weekend, my phone started ringing again. Not with anger this time, but with urgency. The tone had shifted from accusation to damage control, and that change told me everything I needed to know. My mom called first. We need to talk, she said. Not sharp, not pleading, strategic. I'm listening, I replied. This has gone too far, she said. People are drawing conclusions. I leaned back against my couch. They already did. At the party. That was different, she insisted. This is public. There it was. Public was the problem. Not wrong, not hurtful, just visible. We didn't think it would reach your boss, she added quietly. I almost laughed. You said it in front of him. She went silent. We thought he'd ignore it, she said finally. Men usually do. That sentence landed harder than any insult. So you gambled with my career, I said, and lost. Her voice sharpened again. You didn't have to let it blow up like this. I didn't blow it up, I said. I stopped containing it. She sighed. What do you want from us? I considered the question carefully. I want you to stop telling stories about me, I said. Especially ones that erase my work. She scoffed. You're acting like we're enemies. No, I replied. I'm acting like I'm done being your cover. The next call came from my aunt. She didn't waste time. You embarrassed us. I corrected the record, I said. You let them think we're jealous. She snapped. I paused. What do you think you sounded like? She hung up. Luke texted instead of calling. You could have handled this quietly. Families don't do this to each other. I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. Families don't sabotage each other's livelihoods. There was no response after that. At work, the atmosphere had settled. Not tense, clear. My boss looped me into higher-level discussions. My name appeared on agendas without hesitation. The distance I had felt earlier was gone. What remained was respect. One afternoon, a junior colleague stopped by my desk. I just wanted to say, she said hesitantly, thank you for not shrinking. I looked up. What do you mean? She shrugged. It would have been easier to laugh it off or apologize. You didn't. I smiled faintly. Neither did the work. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, scrolling through old photos, family gatherings, holidays, smiles that looked different now that I understood what lived underneath them. They had always been comfortable with my success, as long as it didn't make them feel small. The moment it did, they tried to explain it away. And when that failed, they tried to make me responsible for the fallout. I wasn't. The last call came late Sunday night. My mom again. Her voice sounded tired. People are asking why we're not invited to events anymore, she said. I said nothing. They think we said something inappropriate, she continued. I waited. Did we? She asked, almost whispering. That was new. Yes, I said calmly. You did. She didn't argue. I didn't think words could do this, she said. They always could, I replied. You just didn't think they'd touch you. The call ended shortly after. No apology, no resolution. Just the truth hanging between us, finally acknowledged. And for the first time since the promotion, I slept without replaying conversations in my head. Because the story was no longer being written behind my back. It was finished, and I wasn't the one who lost control of it. The last time I saw my family together after everything happened was at a cousin's birthday dinner. Not because we had reconciled, but because life doesn't stop just because people refuse to apologize. The restaurant was loud, too loud. The kind of place where conversations blur into background noise and everyone pretends that proximity means connection. I arrived late, on purpose, and chose a seat at the far end of the table. My mom smiled when she saw me. It didn't reach her eyes. My aunt avoided my gaze completely. No one mentioned work. No one mentioned the promotion. No one mentioned the email that had quietly closed every door they thought they could reopen. We talked about neutral things, weather, traffic, a movie someone had seen. It was polite. It was empty. Halfway through dinner, my cousin leaned over and said, "So, things good at work?" I met his eyes. Yes, that was it. No follow-up, because there was nothing left to question. Later that night, as I walked to my car, my mom followed me outside. "You didn't have to shut us out like that," she said softly. I unlocked my door. "I didn't shut you out." She frowned. "Then what do you call this?" I turned to face her. "I call it boundaries." She sighed. "You act like we tried to hurt you." I paused. "You tried to explain my success in a way that made sense to you." "That's not the same thing," she said. "It is," I replied. "When the explanation costs me my credibility." She looked away. "I just don't understand why you couldn't let it go," she said. I thought about the way my boss had said my work spoke for itself. About the junior colleague who thanked me for not shrinking. About the fact that my name no longer felt fragile in rooms where decisions were made. "I did let it go," I said. After the truth replaced the rumor, she didn't respond. I drove home alone, windows down, city lights blurring past me. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was moving forward. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. My role expanded. My confidence did too. Not in a loud way, but in the quiet certainty that comes from knowing your work can withstand scrutiny. I stopped explaining myself. At work, I was no longer the girl who got promoted. I was the manager. At home, I was no longer the one who smoothed things over. I was the one who stopped. People sometimes ask me if I regret not confronting my family more directly. If I wish I had yelled, demanded apologies, forced acknowledgement. I don't, because the truth didn't need a performance. It needed light. They thought blood gave them permission to tell stories about me. They thought closeness meant control. They thought my silence was agreement. They were wrong. What they lost that night wasn't access to my job or my reputation. They lost the version of me who would protect them from consequences. And that loss was permanent. I didn't climb my way up by being charming. I climbed by being consistent, by staying when it was easier to leave, by doing work that didn't announce itself until it couldn't be ignored. If you've ever had your success questioned by people who know you best, hear this. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that fits their comfort. And you don't have to argue with a lie for it to collapse. Sometimes all you have to do is stop carrying it. Because when the truth finally stands on its own, it doesn't ask to be believed. It just is.